Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. The federal government has appointed a special interlocutor to help out with the ongoing investigations into hundreds of suspected unmarked graves at former Canadian residential schools. APTN's Fraser Needham has some details.
Kimberly Murray of Ganasatake, Mohawk Territory in Quebec, is the new special interlocutor on suspected unmarked graves at several former residential schools in Canada. She says she fully realizes her job will be challenging.
It was not an easy decision to take this role as special interlocutor.
Murray's role has been described as helping Indigenous communities collect information from the suspected unmarked grave sites and helping resolve jurisdictional disputes if they arise. But as Justice Minister David Lebeni points out, Murray will not have the power to prosecute.
In my role as Attorney General at the federal level, I can't appoint a special prosecutor.
Nonetheless, Murray says she will be working with the communities to see if they want the sites investigated as crime scenes.
Do we invite the police in? What police? RCMP, provincial police, municipal police, First Nations police. And there are pros and cons to all of those that I've heard talking to survivors in the last year.
Chief Cadmus Delorme of Cowessess First Nation says the #1 priority for his community is attaching names to grave sites. But he says Murray will help ensure any evidence is preserved.
This position will make sure that Cowessess, if there is any criminal activity, we are treating our site like a criminal site. Like we're making sure every one of our technical teams gathers every evidence. We can't go to the local RCMP because what are we actually going to show them?
And Kupi Roseanne Cashmere also says her community wants to make sure investigations are done properly.
And it's also about preserving the evidence to ensure that, rigor in our investigation to ensure that if we find that crimes were committed, the evidence is there to pursue those criminal prosecutions.
Marie officially begins her 2-year contract June 14th. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
A 31-year-old Winnipeg woman is in custody and facing charges after police say they located a deceased infant girl in a garbage bin. Winnipeg police are identifying the deceased as Baby Moore. The woman, the mother of the infant, is facing charges of manslaughter and concealed body of a child. Police say they believe Baby Moore was alive when she was placed in the garbage bin.
We're talking about an infant. This is somebody that was born and discarded, has no chance of living a fulfilling life. So it's extremely traumatic for the family. It's extremely traumatic for the community at large. It's traumatic for the first responders that also attended to this event. This is it's immediate and ongoing as far as trauma. And even for the people that are viewing today and people that are going to be reading about this incident, it's very traumatic for them as well.
Vancouver police began a grid search in the hopes of finding further remains of Chelsea Poorman near where she was discovered. The body of Poorman, who had gone missing 2 years ago, was found at an empty mansion earlier this spring. APTN's Tina House has this story and a warning some viewers may find the details disturbing.
Get our line set, guys. Get shoulder to shoulder again.
It's a gruesome and tedious task, but 16 police officers scoured the grounds at Van Dusen Gardens in search of any signs of Chelsea Poorman. It's just a block and a half away from where the 24-year-old was found. Investigators believe that it could have been coyotes that took some of her remains back to their dens. Those dens are located in this dense forest, located along the edge of the park. Palahelsia Lorelei Williams was here on behalf of the family while they searched.
This is just one part of the investigation. The case isn't closed, thankfully.
Just last week, Vancouver police brought a cadaver dog through the area, and now this grid search.
They wanted to search the areas that aren't maintained. So inside Van Dusen Garden, the majority of the areas are maintained. So if they were to come across something, they would have already. So they combed these areas where there's absolutely nobody or nothing, because that's where the coyotes would go. One of the things that they're saying is an animal could have possibly taken those other pieces of her body, and this is just one of the theories.
Police were tight-lipped about what, if anything, they found, but did send us this statement. We are conducting an ongoing investigation into the disappearance and death of Chelsea Poorman. We have shared details about the search with Chelsea's family. This continues to be an ongoing investigation, and we ask anyone who has information about Chelsea's disappearance, who has not yet come forward, to contact the VPD Major Crimes Section at 604-717-2500. And for Lorelei, who has devoted the past decade of her life helping families search for their loved ones, it's taken a toll.
I want to make sure to be there and be strong for the family, because I can't imagine what they're going through right now, especially Sheila. And yeah, it's really hard, but I just gotta be strong, especially because I have the resources and I can be that person to take notes or, you know, say things.
The family are still seeking answers as to how Chelsea Poorman ended up here at this vacant mansion in Shaughnessy and what happened to her. She was last seen on the night of September the 6th, 2020, and reported missing 2 days later.
I'll continue to be here to support the family as much as I can until there's justice for Chelsea.
Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
The Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs has responded to numerous open letters sent to the organization regarding the workplace investigation into Grand Chief Arlen Dumas after a complaint by a staff member. A letter written by Indigenous women's groups and political parties was critical of the way the AMC is handling sexual assault allegations against Grand Chief Arlen Dumas by a number of women. It says a request to meet the chiefs to talk about a trauma-informed way of helping the women who made the allegations has gone unanswered. AMC has responded saying, quote, there have not been any further formal complaints brought to AMC regarding Grand Chief Arlen Dumas. AMC also stated while they appreciate advocates' offer for assistance, they are required to maintain the complainant's confidentiality. On Monday, we brought you news that former Catholic priest Eric Jager was out of jail after completing 2/3 of his sentence. Our Kent Driscoll joins us from Iqaluit, where he has been tracking the response to the release. Kent, I understand the federal government weighed in today. Can you explain?
Sure, but first, a quick review. Now, Jager was convicted on 24 counts of sex crimes against Inuit youth in 2015, and he was sentenced to 19 years in prison. The 4 years he spent in custody prior to trial shaved some time off that prison stay. They call it statutory release, where he gets out of prison, but the parole board can put conditions on him. In Jager's case, he has to stay at a halfway house and report in nightly. Today, Minister of Crown and Indigenous Affairs Mark Miller took a question about Jager being released from prison. Here's what he had to say.
You want my view on it? I think people like that should rot in jail, and it's especially for the crimes they committed.
In his application to the parole board, Jager asked to stay with his religious order, the Oblates of Mary Immaculate, instead of at a halfway house. The parole board, they turned that request down. We contacted the Oblates to find out if they were supporting Jager in his release. Here's what they told us. After completing a stay in a halfway house, it is possible that Jager may reside in an Oblate community, where we can ensure he follows his release plan under close supervision and with a full restriction of any activity that would bring him into contact with minors. We have been in touch directly with Inuit Tapiri Kanatami regarding Eric Jager's release. Now, that last line, that generates a lot of questions. The Oblates say they informed Inuit Tapiri Kanatami of Jager's release. Jager's victims, they're all ITK members. ITK represents Inuit nationally. We couldn't find any record of ITK informing Inuit about Jager's return to society. So we asked them what they knew and when they knew it. Here's what they wrote back. ITK continues to advocate for the full force of the criminal justice system to be brought against those who commit crimes against the most vulnerable in our society. This includes priests who have evaded and continue to evade justice in Canada. There is no measure of justice that can erase the pain their actions have caused. The system is imperfect, and we continue to work to advance measures to improve the ways Inuit interact with the justice system. Now, that ITK statement doesn't begin to address the oblate stance that they told ITK about Jager's release, and if they chose to keep that information to themselves instead of informing Inuit. So we asked ITK the questions again. Here's what they had to say. ITK did receive brief information from the Oblates in regards to a specific priest who committed crimes in Nunavut who was being paroled. The full details of that case and that parole decision lie with the parole board. ITK does not have and is not in a position to share full details. Back to you in Winnipeg.
Thanks, Kent. You can find more on that story over on our website, aptnnews.ca. Indigenous people are set to have a bigger say in the protection of historic sites. That story and more coming up. Welcome back. Saskatchewan RCMP have charged 3 men in connection with a standoff and shooting on Cumberland House, Cree Nation, last week. The incident ended with one 22-year-old man dead after exchanging gunfire with officers. RCMP have not released his name. 24-year-old Anthony Katachuk and 21-year-old Bernie Katachuk of Cumberland House and 25-year-old Gage Pratt of Prince Albert face charges including possession of cocaine for the purposes of trafficking. Anthony Katachuk also faces weapons charges and failing to comply with the release order. Last Thursday's shootout saw some tense moments. People were told to stay inside, and the school was in hold and secure. An independent investigation is underway. The Trudeau government has announced legislation in Parliament that will see Indigenous people play a greater role in protecting Canadian historic sites. With more on the story, here's APTN's Fraser Needham.
This will be the first legislation of its kind in Canada and will result in a stronger voice for Indigenous peoples in determining the people, places and events that are of national historic significance in Canada.
That's Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault talking about Bill C-23. Among other things, the proposed legislation will add 3 new positions to the Historic Sites and Monuments Board of Canada for First Nations, Métis and Inuit representatives. Guilbeault says the bill builds upon some of the current work that is already going on, which includes signing agreements between the government and Indigenous communities to co-manage national parks.
Parks Canada is already working with Indigenous communities across the country to adapt some historical sites, to add some elements about the history, culture of Indigenous peoples in this country. So,
the government says the new legislation is in response to the Truth and Reconciliation Call to Action number 79. Which calls for the development of a reconciliation framework for Canadian heritage and commemoration. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
The Tahltan Nation and the BC government have signed a first-of-its-kind consent-based decision-making agreement, which is expected to change the way resource projects are handled in the province. As APTN's Lee Wilson tells us, the agreement is a historic shift in the province's legal framework.
I'm deeply honored that we are the first Indigenous group in British Columbia to sign an agreement like this.
Tahltan Central Government President Chad Norman-Day shares his excitement over the signing of the first consent-based agreement under the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act with the province of British Columbia. Tahltan territory is located in northern BC, makes up 11% of the province. The province started negotiations with the Tahltan in the summer of last year. BC Premier John Horgan says they are delivering on reconciliation while encouraging responsible investment in BC with this new agreement.
British Columbia is open for business in a collaborative way, in a sustainable way that starts and begins with the inherent rights of Indigenous peoples to have a say and determine what happens on their territory and how we can go forward together in the interests of all British Columbians.
The agreement honors Tahltan jurisdiction and land management decisions in their territory, including the Eskay Creek Revitalization Project. The Eskay Creek mine operated in Tahltan territory from 1994 to 2008, and it was the highest grade producing gold mine in the world. But the Tahltan Nation say they never gave the consent for the mine to operate on their territory. Skeena Resources acquired the mine in 2020. They have been working with the Tahltan Nation to advance and reopen the Eskay Creek mine.
And so it's a very, very important step for the project and a foundational building block for the revitalization and the reopening of the Eskay Creek project.
The BC government says the consent-based agreement demonstrates successful collaboration with First Nations. The Tahltan central government stated they have been clear that even though their territory is mineral rich, there will be no mining without their stewardship around wildlife, fisheries, and environmental management.
It's extremely important that moving forward, Tahltan rights, Tahltan decisions, Tahltan values are at the heart of all of these projects. I often tell people that whether the government is orange or red or blue or green, the Tahltan Nation is always going to be covered in a lot of gold, silver, copper, and a lot of other minerals. So it's important that, that we build these structures and that we do it properly.
Lee Wilson, APTN National News, Kitimat.
A unique aviation school has taken flight on a Mohawk Nation. We've got that story and more coming up after the break. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Cornelia Aylock was on Highway 88 north of Earth Creek, Alberta, when she came across the cinnamon-colored bears. She calls them a spirit bear. If you have a great photo and want to share it across Turtle Island, email it in to share@aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the east coast, 18 with showers in Halifax, cloudy, and 19 in Charlottetown. 20 with rain in Kuujjuaq, 10 in Nain. 19 with rain in Montreal, showers and 16 in Val-d'Or. 16 with rain for Sault Ste. Marie, 21 in North Bay. 20 with rain in Thunder Bay and Sioux Lookout. In northern Manitoba, 22 in God's Lake, Norway House, and the Paw. 24 for Winnipeg and Brandon, 23 in Dauphin. 24 with showers in Regina, 25 and rain in Saskatoon. 25 with rain in Meadow Lake, 23 in La Ronge. In northern Alberta, 24 in Peace River and Grand Prairie. 23 in Edmonton, sunny, 25 in Lethbridge. 17 with rain in Vancouver, rain, and 21 in Kamloops. 15 with showers in Prince George, rain, and 20 in Fort Nelson. Plus 6 with snow in Old Crow, rain, and 19 in Whitehorse. 25 for Yellowknife, 15 in Norman Wells. Minus 2 in Sax Harbor, plus 1 for Paulatuck. Sunny and 5 for Chesterfield, 8 in Whale Cove. Snow and minus 2 in Resolute, plus 1 with snow in Joe Haven. A very unique aviation school calls the Mohawk community of Tyendinaga home. It's the one and only post-secondary Indigenous aviation program geared to First Nations, Métis, or Inuit in the country. Here's Annette Francis with its success and setbacks.
6 days a week, morning to night, you'll find this runway busy with flights taking off and landing. These are students training to become pilots in the First Nations Technical Institute's aviation program. It's helping Joseph Aklajuk's dream become a reality.
In the later in high school, we were asked to do an assignment of what we wanted a career to be, and I already knew I wanted to be a pilot. So I had searched Indigenous flight school, and FNTI was the first one that came up, and I had applied immediately when I found out.
Yeah, it's going to be a big loss to the territory.
Just last February, a raging fire almost brought an abrupt end to the school year. The dean of the aviation program started her flight career as a student here in 1990. She says it was devastating.
We lost everything. We've been building this program for 30 years, and then suddenly, in 17 minutes, the largest part of our program was gone. You know, the World War II hangar, our approved maintenance organization, 13 aircraft, 5 of which were brand new, and our dispatch. Everything was gone. So moving forward was a difficult task to know where to start first.
And they came up with a plan fast with support.
We were able to secure 3 leases of aircraft, 2 of which came from Seneca College, who were like one of the first to reach out to say, hey, how can we help? What can we do? And we said we needed airplanes. And so we were able to lease 2 aircraft from Seneca and 1 from an old FNTI friend of ours.
There's support for the new students from across the country as well.
For the students that were yet to come, the aviation industry also started reaching out too. We have a really great reputation and relationships with a lot of airlines, and they wanted to know how to support us. So they are now supporting the 13 students to flight train near their communities this summer. So we have 7 flight training units supporting 13 students across Canada.
The students are now working 6 days a week to catch up on their training hours. Aklajuk's already earned his commercial pilot's license and needs a few more things before he graduates in a few months. And like all the other graduates of this program, he's already been offered a job.
When I do finish, I do want to go back home and work for Canadian North. I want to be starting the process for communicating with them soon. But when I do go back home, I want to make my family proud and fly them on the planes there.
Tessie Chinna expects to graduate this fall. She says one day off isn't too bad. Flying's what drew her to the program.
I'm from the Northwest Territories, so you meet a lot of pilots, and no pilots ever hate their job, so I was like, it intrigued me.
Remediation on the burn site is expected to be complete soon. Then a new building will go up to house the leased planes. Another 10 students are expected to begin the popular program in September, and 50 more are on a waiting list. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Tyendinaga.
That's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Wednesday. For news anytime, visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you back here tomorrow.